we're going to get started. So this is a little outside of what we normally do, but this is a special event. This is the Outlier Project Lounge Holiday Special Event Legend Series. Quick housekeeping before we get cranking. So our next 3 book clubs, we just announced today. You guys probably haven't even seen it. We're doing a father-son book club with Steve Nudelberg and his son Mark, who both wrote fantastic books. They're coming up in January. Then we have the head of the D School at Stanford University, Jeremy Utley. He's coming on to talk about his new book, Idea Flow. And then we have our good friend Laura Gassner-Otting. Her first book, Limitless, was a bestseller. You've probably seen her on the Today Show or Good Morning America. She just wrote a new book called Wonder Hell. And so she's going to be our 3rd author for next year. And then we go into our Legends series. We've got Chuck Patterson on January 24th. Chuck is probably one of the most renowned extreme skiers and surfers in the world. And he will have everybody jealous because he's 50 years old and he's never had a job in his life other than skiing and surfing. He's absolutely off the charts amazing. We follow that up with Candace Nelson. Everybody knows about the cupcake craze. I hope you know that Candace Nelson is the reason for the cupcake craze. She started a company called Sprinkles in Beverly Hills that went ballistic. And then it went viral. She sold Sprinkles. She started a new company called Pizzana. She already wrote a New York Times bestseller. Her new book, Sweet Success, is just out. And we're going to be having her join. And then on Valentine's Day, the man, the myth, the legend, Jackie Summers, the founder, and the man behind Sorrel is joining us, and I cannot wait for that hour with Jackie. But today, this is kind of a special holiday event. Molly Carr is absolutely unbelievable and love her to death. So let me give you a little bit of background on Molly. The New York Times called Molly's performances intoxicating. I think it's pronounced Strad. Is it Strad? That
Strad, like Stradivarius. Yeah.
Called her performances ravishing. She is universally hailed as one of the world's best violists. She's been featured on the BBC, CNN. She's been in Forbes, PBS, Live from Lincoln Center, Good Morning America, NPR. She was named by the Sally Klein Show as one of America's leading creative women. She was honored at the UN for her community service and for her work in prisons and with refugees around the world, with her nonprofit, which is called Project Music Heals Us, which we're going to talk about. She is a violist in the Juilliard's string quartet. She's a part of the Carr Petrova duo. They sold out Carnegie Hall, praised by Classical Post as being deeply moving. She's on the faculty of Juilliard, so she's not only a Juilliard grad, she's on the faculty of Juilliard. She's on the faculty of the Manhattan School for Music, and she's on the faculty for Bard College. Meg and I just literally saw her on Wednesday night play Carnegie Hall with Itzhak Perlman. She knocked it out of the park. Many standing ovations. It is truly an honor anytime you get to witness somebody perform at a high level, whether it's on a ball field, whether it is music or any of the arts or even in business. It's just an honor. So Molly, we are fired up to see you.
Well,
thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And my goodness, what an introduction. No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Well, you just played Carnegie Hall, so it's like Carnegie Hall, now the Outlier Project.
Yeah, well, that's playing. Now I have to talk. This is gonna be
That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that, but I've heard you talk before many times, and you're fantastic. So this group, the Outlier Project, is all about people who are very intent on not living an ordinary life, but understanding that anybody can be ordinary, but we all have the power to choose to be extraordinary. And I will tell you, just in the last 2 weeks, I was just sharing this with Kathy Leckie. In the last 2 weeks, these are some of the new members we have. We have somebody from the Air Force. We have one of the world's top chocolatiers. Thank you, Jackie, for that introduction. We have somebody that works at Apple. We have somebody that works at NASA. We have 2 Olympians. We have a pro soccer player. We have a former pro lacrosse player, and we have a best-selling author. That's literally in the last 2 weeks. Those are people that joined the Outlier Project. So this is a really cool, eclectic group. So we're fascinated by people that perform at a world-class level. So I guess my first question, Molly, is tell us a little bit about when you got started on your music journey. How old were you? And then let's talk a little bit about the time. I'm always fascinated by, I just saw you perform for 2 hours at Carnegie Hall, but what people don't see, just like a Kobe Bryant or anybody else, is the 10,000 hours that they practice to kind of get there. So tell us about your journey to be where you are today.
Yeah, well, so I started playing the violin actually when I was 6 years old. I was, in fact, homeschooled my entire life until going to college. And I was homeschooled because my older sister is very intelligent, and my mom wanted to make sure she got a great education. And so I was sort of the little sister tag along. So as part of my education, my mom wanted me to play an instrument. And so she asked me what instrument, and I eventually settled on the violin. I wasn't so sold on it, actually. It turned out that I had an affinity for it. I remember within like the first couple classes, they were group classes to start. My teacher would pull me up in front of the crowd and say, play like Molly. And even then I was like, oh my God. And but it wasn't like I just did it because it was what I was supposed to do, because my mom said I needed to do it. Yeah. But then when I was 10 years old, my violin teacher needed to start a chamber group and wanted a violist in the chamber group. And so, but she didn't have any violist, only violinists. So she pulled together a couple of violinists and we all drew straws, and I got the short straw. So I got handed a viola, and holy smokes. Yeah, I never looked back. There was something in the sonority, something in the voice of that instrument, even though it was a really terrible instrument. I like looking back now, I had a much better violin, like quality instrument than the viola I was playing there. But I just, oh my gosh, it grabbed me and wouldn't let go. And so I from that moment, around age 10, 11, I sort of decided that, yeah, this is what I want. I want to be a musician. And so with that decision, then immediately came, all right, this is going to take a lot. And so there's 1 year that I went to school. It was my freshman year of high school. I went to a private school in Reno, Nevada. But that was right when I decided, okay, this is my path. And they wouldn't allow me enough time to practice. I needed 4 or 5 hours every day to practice. And so I asked my mom if she would be my teacher again, and she accepted me back into homeschool, high school. So, and then we went from there, practiced all through high school, traveling, doing auditions, competitions. yeah, and then ended up auditioning for Juilliard for my undergraduate, and went there and stayed there. I'm still there a decade and however much later.
Absolutely amazing. So I had Merrill Hodge on months back. He played football for the Steelers and the Bears, and then he transitioned to a broadcasting career. And what I thought was really interesting is he used to do these very short segments. I think they were just like a couple minutes. And he said that I'm butchering the numbers, but the hours, it was like he was putting in like 40 hours of prep to do 10 minutes of performance on TV. So even for something like I saw Wednesday night, it was funny because Molly was initially going to do this Wednesday, and then she's like, oh, Mr. P, meaning Itzhak Perlman, wanted them to practice. So tell us about the practice that you still do, even though you're at a world-class level.
Yeah, so it depends. Every group is different and every performance is different. It very much depends on the type of performer and the difficulty of the piece that we're working on. But I would say, I mean, it's hard to judge now because all of my colleagues and I have been basically we've been practicing since 6 years old, right? Yeah. And so when we come to a piece that maybe we played before, do the hours of 1,000, 1,200 hours that we already put into the piece, does that count towards this performance that we're about to play? Absolutely. So for this concert tour that we just did with Mr. Perlman and Emmanuel Axe and Jean-Yves Thibaudet, it was a week of rehearsing. It was every day doing 5-6 hours a day to pull it together, and then go play. We went and played our first concert in Ann Arbor, and then the next day we were back rehearsing again, and then went to Toronto and played another concert, and then the next day we were back rehearsing again. It's like a process of assessment in what went well, what didn't go well in the performance, and then putting it back into the workshop and going specifically to the places that things didn't go quite as we had hoped they would.
Oh, go ahead.
So it was really smart the way that the tour was set up by our management, in that we essentially had many rounds of practicing performing, being under pressure, and seeing how that went before playing in Carnegie Hall. So that was really helpful, actually. So you got the best version, Scott.
So you were phenomenal. So to me, and Meg and I were talking about this, the performance was flawless. It was just magical. But as a performer, I'm wondering, I had this experience. So Brandi Chastain is a Hall of Fame soccer player, and Meg and I watched a soccer game with her, and she was with one of her teammates on the national team, former teammates on the national team. And the way they were talking about soccer, it was like I never saw a soccer game in my life. They were talking at such a high level and critiquing things that I would never see. So I'm curious, was that a flawless performance, or afterwards are you like, oh, I could have done this? Or
oh, there were so many things. Yeah. That I was like, I was like, I missed that. Oh shoot. It's the last time too. I don't have another chance to fix it. And just like sometimes slightly missed body language, or a misread breath, or matching pitch, not exactly matching pitch. Okay.
When you say misread breath, what do you mean by that?
So the way that we are as chamber musicians trained and able to play together is by breath. So if I go like this, then I know my colleague knows exactly the timing of when the out breath is going to come, which is essentially when you make the sound, even though obviously you don't use your breath to make the sound, but we relate it in the same way. And also like the character of the sound that it's about to come out. Like if you're about to shout at someone, you're probably not going to go, gently breathe in. So it's the same, that however you breathe, that's a sound quality and character that you're going to portray in your music.
And that comes through your emotions through the instrument.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So those are things, it's like if you talk to Navy SEALs and stuff, they talk about breathing when they're shooting and all this stuff that, people don't ever think about. That's incredible. I'm curious, do you get nervous before a performance?
I get very nervous. I am like, it's a lifelong struggle for me. And sometimes the confusing thing for me is that sometimes I don't get nervous at all. And in those times I'm trying to analyze, why am I not nervous? Should I be nervous? I don't know. Am I not going to play well because I'm not nervous? So I'm like nervous that I'm not nervous. And yeah, it's being a musician, being a performing musician it's all a psychological game, and trying to figure out how to get yourself into the space where you're just in the present moment and let everything pass by and trust. Because your body's like, get me out of here.
Right. What do you do? What techniques do you use to calm your nerves? I have a lot of friends that are very prominent public speakers, and they will say it doesn't matter how many stages they've been on, how many people they've spoken in front of, they always get anxiety, but they channel it into positive energy. Any techniques that you use?
So I used to try and do like a very specific routine, like warm-up routine. But then I found that if I like ran out of time or something happened and that didn't work, then I would be like, oh no, I didn't do my routine. And so then it would get me stressed out. And so honestly, the thing that's helped me the most is to give up having a routine and to feel like even if I fall off the stage, I'm still alive and my dog still loves me and my husband still loves me and it's going to be okay. No one died. But to sort of the best practice is actually just doing it again and again and again and again and again, and starting to realize that I'm still here. It's okay. And so just my way of dealing with nerves is sort of deciding that I'm gonna just see what happens on stage in a way. Like obviously make sure that I'm like my muscles are warmed up enough, that I'm hydrated, that I'm as well rested as I can be. But then anything beyond that, it's sort of out of my control. I realize. So then just sort of go, feel, breathe, listen. And also this is a big one recently. Whenever I find myself starting to get into like the judgmental, like worry side of performing, like the voices start creeping in, then I try to actually aim all of my focus and all of my hearing outward to try and observe and absorb what's going around me so that I can react to it, because then it's like I don't have time to think about things so much, and it's more instinctual.
Right. It's interesting because I don't know, myself, I'll only speak for myself. I never think of the physical aspect of playing. And you just talked about hydration. You talked about your muscles being warmed up, almost like a sporting event. But then again, now I've seen you play so many times that there is a lot of physicality to that. like an athlete, I've got to believe there are times when you take the stage. Do you play hurt? Like, do you play with like, oh man, my shoulder or my whatever doesn't feel great today, but I'm gonna tough it out?
Yeah, actually, so almost exactly a year ago, I got in a car accident that I actually should have died, and ended up was incredibly lucky. There were so many things that went right that shouldn't have gone right, but one of the things that didn't go quite right is I went like this when I stopped, and I ripped my ligaments here. And so it's been a bit of a journey actually over the past year in trying to navigate that, trying to figure out what to do and how to care for it and still not let everyone down, you know, that I've committed to performing for and with. And so yeah, so I had for a while to be on a vegan diet and do special stretches and just try and just do everything I possibly can to make sure that this can heal itself. I had a couple steroid shots, and sometimes, yeah, it doesn't feel good. But in some ways, I had really, really great teachers, and my teachers would always tell me that pain is the best teacher, because if you have pain, it means you need to change something. You need to pay attention to it. So in a way, when I'm feeling that something isn't quite right, then that means I need to care for my body and think about, not go quite so much into the instinctual and come back to thinking about, okay, the physicality of it. Am I balanced? Am I in top shape? Yeah.
You know, it was so fascinating to see you play with Itzhak Perlman. And I know that your relationship with Mr. P, as you call him, goes back, what, 20 something years?
Yeah, 22 years. Yeah.
You were 14, I think, right?
Yeah, I was 14.
Tell everybody the story of, I think he said, no, you know, I only take 40 people. This is the story that I'm remembering. And it was like, oh, wait a second. No, I'll take 41 because Molly's really unbelievable. But you were his student and now you perform with him. That's crazy. Tell us a little bit about how that relationship started.
Yeah. So when I was 12 years old, he came to Reno, where I was living, where I was growing up, and played in one of the casinos. And it was, of course, a totally sold out auditorium. And I just remember being like, wow, like I want to play like him. It's just so, I mean, what can you say? It's Itzhak Perlman. And so when I had someone from Reno, a conductor of an orchestra in Reno, tell me, oh, you should apply to his program. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. All right. I'll, send in this audition tape. Okay. It'll send it off and I'll never hear anything. Well, a week later, after sending it, I got a call from Mr. and Mrs. Perlman saying, we want you to come to our program, our summer school. And yeah, we don't have room normally, but we'll make a spot for you because we really think you should be there. So that was that was my freshman year, when I was going to a private school. So I walked into school like with my feathers up and I was like, hey, guess who I just talked to? and got to tell all my classmates that, I was besties with Mr. Perlman now. But yeah, so I ended up going to his summer school, and he has basically, in every big decision of my life, he and his wife have been the people to guide me. Whenever I'm distraught or confused, then I just go and sit and drink tea and get advice from them. And They do this. I'm not unique in this. They are incredible, incredible people, and basically are parents to like hundreds of musicians across the world that they've adopted through their school. And their school is something, it's called the Perlman Music Program. And it's something that once you're in, you're in. You audition and then you don't have to audition ever again. You're one of their kids. And so yeah, so getting to perform with him now, it's mixed for me because I just love him so much. He's like my musical dad. And but I also am like, I have a lot of weird psychological stuff from being in that school and always trying to live up to what they were telling me I was capable of. And so that was really hard for me to work through. That took a lot of years to that anytime I performed, I felt the pressure of like, oh no, what if I don't play as well as they think I should, or like, you know, if I don't fulfill my potential. And so now coming back and playing with them after decades, yeah, it's sort of like the first concert, in all honesty, the first concert I walked off the stage and I was just so upset with myself that I let myself go back into that psychological place of like 14 years old, of like trying to like impress Mr. P. And so then, yeah, but it was good, I think, that happened, because then the next concert I came and
So
so
it's got to be, so you're so young and you're already in the Juilliard string quartet, which I think is like is that a lifetime thing?
yeah, I'm incredibly lucky. Yeah.
So tell people, because I don't think people understand that process of, you know, how that comes about. And to me, that's fascinating. Tell us about kind of how the Juilliard String Quartet is formed.
Yeah, so the Juilliard Quartet is 75 years old, and it's I grew up like, you know, doing this to the Juilliard Quartet and listening to their recordings and learning from all of the members, and just really revering everything that they did. And so obviously it's not the original members. It's been a number of replacements over the 75 years, but they have a number of policies in place that ensure the quality of the ensemble. And one of those is that you can't have two members quit at the same time, that there always has to be at least a year, if not two, between the like replacing the member, and in order to make sure that the other three really keep the personality of the group. And so I most certainly never thought that I would be the violist of the Juilliard String Quartet. I actually had been in a string quartet, a professional string quartet, a couple years ago, and it's a really, really tough life to be basically married to three other people and just be in each other's faces, touring on the same flights, in the same hotels, on the same stage, rehearsing. It's just relentless. So when I ended my time with the previous group, I was like, I'm never being in a string quartet again. And then then very, very tragically, the former violist of the Juilliard String Quartet passed away last year of cancer, a very rare cancer that just, he was sick for like 3 months and then he was gone. And so a couple months after his passing, I got a call from Aretta, the first violinist of the Juilliard String Quartet, and she asked if I would want to come and just read with them and see what we all thought, and basically audition. And I said yes. And I know a number of other people were asked as well, were invited to audition. Um, but I was very lucky that I got to be the special one. I got picked.
Absolutely incredible. So I think Molly's going to perform for us in a second, but what's next for you? You're so young, you've got so much going on. What's next?
Well, so one of the things that we haven't chatted about yet is this nonprofit that I founded back in 2014. And that has been just a very integral part of my growth, actually, as a musician and as a person over the past almost decade. The nonprofit exists to bring the arts into communities and spaces that don't have access. So over the past 9 years, we've reached over 21,000 individuals in prisons and refugee camps, homeless shelters, ICUs and hospitals across the nation, and underserved schools around actually not just in America, but around the globe. I had I've talked a little bit about my psychological struggles with being a musician, and being a part of founding and growing this nonprofit I can say, has saved me because there's a lot of what I do that is very egocentric. It can be, and it needs to be in some ways in order to be the absolute best that I can be, that I have to spend a lot of time with myself and really hone all of the tiny little details of every little thing. And so in doing that for so many years, I really got worn out. I really got exhausted of just thinking, why am I doing this? What is this? How there's so many problems around me. What am I doing? Just, performing and not taking care of any of them. And so being able to start a nonprofit where all of that time that I spend refining my art, to give it in situations where I actually really see the power of the arts to make a difference, to change an atmosphere, to change the inside of a prison, to build friendships, to build communities, is just, that's like fuel for a century. So if you ask, what am I doing next? I'm working like hell to grow my nonprofit. We just drew up a 5-year plan just this month, and I'm really excited about it. So yeah, if you all would like to go check out the website, we have many wonderful musicians who have agreed to take part, and I'm so excited that it's essentially becoming a movement for musicians trained like I was to go and use their art for social good and social change. I'm excited about it. So that's what's next for me, besides a lot of touring and a lot of practicing.
Right. It's one of the things that I've always admired about you, is that passion that you have for giving back. And we're a community that believes in giving back. So a portion of everybody's membership goes to an organization called the Look for the Good Project. But because this is a special event, we wanted to make $1,000 donation to you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we are grateful for you. You're extraordinary. I know everyone is dying to hear a taste of what I heard on Wednesday night and what I've had the privilege to listen to over the years of knowing Molly. So I'd love it if you could introduce a piece to us and talk us through. I thought that was an interesting part of at Carnegie Hall. What happens is Molly and Itzhak Perlman and Axe and these folks, they just come on stage, nobody says a word, and they start playing. I mean, you have a playbill and you can kind of follow along that, okay, this is what it is, but there's no announcements. So it's different from other performances.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think that that's something at Project Music Heals Us, that whenever we perform, anywhere we perform, we always talk a lot about why the heck we're performing. Why do we care to be there, to take up their time and, make their eardrums buzz? And so the piece that I would love to share a little bit with you about, that was a weird grammatic way to say, sorry. The piece that I want to talk to you about and perform for you is called Lullaby, from the ballet Guyane. It's actually a little piece that's written for viola and piano. It's written for orchestra because it's for a ballet. But my dual partner and I loved it so much that we pulled it into the world of viola and piano. And the story that goes with it is, in the ballet, there's a heroine named Guyane, and she spends the whole ballet very frustrated with her abusive husband, who is doing a lot of illegal things, not a good guy, and she's trying to have her voice known, and trying to direct him into a better path, and all the time is met with abuse and just being shut down. And so where you find this little piece that I'm going to play for you is just like 2/3 of the way into the ballet, where she's just had a huge fight with her husband, and he's locked her into a closet holding her child. And for the first time in the whole ballet, you hear her completely honest voice. You hear her as she sings to her child the truth of her voice, that it's not shoved away, it's not held in, it's impassioned and loving, and all the things that a lullaby can hold, and yet so much more. So we were really moved by this story and the music itself, and actually ended up, my dual partner and I ended up playing this in refugee camps across the Middle East, in Bulgaria and in Denmark. And the message of this music, without just telling the story and then playing this music, we had so many people, so many women come up and say, thank you, we know what you were saying. Thank you for that. It was really powerful. So this is, I have to try and get situated here, sorry. And also turn sound on so you can hear properly. Okay, second. See me? I don't have my glasses on.
Yep. Oh my God, that was so beautiful. Unbelievable.
Well,
Uh,
thank-
that yeah,
One of my favorite pieces.
it's what's amazing is the emotion that it can bring out of you. Um, and I'm sure you as the performer, but us listening, it's so interesting how it can evoke so much emotion. It's incredible, incredible. That was unbelievable. Um, Molly, would you mind fielding a question or two from our members?
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Yeah.
If you have a question for Molly, drop it in the chat. You don't have to ask the question, just let us know and I'll tee up with Molly. That was gorgeous. Scott, you've got a question. You're up. Oh, we can't hear you, Scott.
How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wiping away tears, trying to get my microphone to work. Thank you, Scott, for this opportunity. But Molly, thank you for just a wonderful Friday afternoon. Where could you go to listen to that? That's incredible. Going back to the earlier part of the conversation, and Scott, you asked the question about, did you have a perfect performance? And I kept thinking a lot about, my years of flying in the Air Force. And, we always had a saying where we were trying to chase perfection, but we achieved excellence, right? You can never fly a perfect sortie, a perfect mission, although you will try, you will train, you will rehearse, and you'll get there. But the most valuable piece in any sortie I've ever flown was the debrief, the after action time that you had as a crew. No matter what your rank was, no matter how experienced you were, we would talk about it as individuals and critique each other very openly and honestly in an effort to chase that perfect sortie, right? And I'm wondering, what does that look like in your world? Is it the same kind of seriousness paid to a debrief after practicing and rehearsing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I always actually in teaching at Juilliard and teaching my students, they're always asking me, what does the perfect practice session look like? And from what I've determined in my however many years of going at it and trying to figure out the perfect practice session, is there has to be a performance part of the practice, either that or an actual performance. And then there has to be the assessment of the performance. That's the workshopping part of it. Then there's also a third part that is just basically go to the gym and make sure that your body is able to do everything that you want it to be able to do. And so, yeah, you can't have, you need all three. If you have a performance and you don't have the debrief, you're going to do the same mistakes the next time, right? You need that that feedback and that assessment and that thinking through everything that happened in order to improve, to know what to work on. Otherwise, you're just sort of spending time with a wooden box, not really with any aim or direction. So yeah, did I answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
We're on a military roll here. So we've got a 22-year United States Marine Sergeant Major, Jason Polite in California. You're up with Molly.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for putting this together. Molly, that absolutely touched my soul. Thank you for joining us today and performing for us. That was amazing. The question that I have is, it's one thing to be very good in your own city or in your state, but when you get to when you get to the level of being a world-renowned violist, at what point in your career did you realize that it's okay to accept all of the accolades that were coming to you? Because I know that, you know, all of that practice means something at some point, but when you keep being told you're that good at something, when did you accept that as a person?
Yeah, so I still haven't accepted that. Yeah, and that's funny. So the first concert that I played with Mr. Perlman, that I came off and I was so upset with myself. I called my husband and was telling him about it, and he was like, "When are you gonna believe that you're one of them?" And I was like, "Never." Which I don't know if it's a delicate balance between trusting what you have and the experience of like hearing that stuff, I guess, for years, but then also like never actually trusting it, so that you're always on your edge and you're always moving forward. And I think I'm really good at this one, and like, you know, always staying just a little bit anxious, like I'm not good enough to be here, and like, why are you asking me? So yeah, I think this is something, the moment so on my couple years ago, I started working with a career development person, because I realized that I had just so much fear inside of me, of years of being told that I was this and I was that, and just not feeling like the imposter syndrome. And so I started working with this guy, and part of his therapy basically was for me to write out my real story from my earliest years until now, to just like define for myself what it is that brought me there or here. And that's actually the story that I have. It's a super long, ridiculously long, but I posted it. I tried to be brave enough and just like put it out into the world. It's on my website, and one section is talking exactly about that, you know, I chose to be a musician because I just loved the sound. I love the place of expression. I love like, it's basically like being in a meditative state when you really are, you know, honing when you love to do. But then I started getting all of these compliments, and I was like, well, heck yeah. And then that really messed with my head, and that really, it actually stole my joy. It took me away from the reason that I chose to play my instrument. And so it's really helpful, I think, to have positive feedback when you start to live your life on that outside feedback. It's the same with everything, I think, in life. Then it gets to be really detrimental, and it really messes with my head. And obviously I still have stuff to deal with that. So the long-winded answer.
Oh, thank you for sharing your soul with us. Appreciate it.
No, that vulnerability is priceless. And it's inspiring for everybody that is trying to get to a world-class level to understand that even when you get there, you still have that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome, and that working with coaches or therapists or whatever is, you know, so vital. We're gonna, I think, try to get in 2 more questions, because I want to be conscious of Molly's time. Sunny in Arizona, you're up with Molly.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much. Whew, that was soul stirring for sure. But what I would like to know is, what type of mindset or psychological preparation do you do as you're getting ready for a show at Carnegie Hall or with the Juilliard group? What does that look like as your mind is preparing for that?
Yeah. So I think now that, so my husband is a psychologist and training to be a psychologist. And so I'm starting to learn all of the terms of like what I've been doing to deal with stage fright my whole life. And basically what I do, and now I've forgotten the term, but it's like taking a river and then like directing it this way. So my version of dealing with stage fright is like just thinking about something else. And like if I'll feel that my body feels different, I'll feel that like basically I could like stop a semi. Sometimes when I have enough adrenaline in my system and be like, oh my God, 3,600 people out there. And so my version that I've sort of settled into is sort of like pretend it's not happening. And just like, oh, that lion there, he's fine. Just like let him be until I'm on stage, and then I can listen, react, feel, remember what I did in my practice sessions. One thing though I will say is like there's the left brain and the right brain, right? So which I'm not doing very well here. Whichever one is the artistic side is the very reactive one, that'll be in the motion in the moment. But I've also discovered that it's really helpful to have what I call like red flags or checker points through as I play, that like if I start to get pulled out of that trusting place, then I'll have something that just like is able to kick me in and ensure that I'm like, okay, I know this works when I drop my right shoulder. I know this works when So sometimes in preparation, just to give myself something to think about before, as I'm like starting to do this backstage, is actually just think through the checker points and walk through a path of, then I drop my shoulder, then I think about my pinky toe, then I think about, not really, I don't really think about my pinky toe. Then I balance to my second finger, then I balance, I breathe in here, I breathe out here, get to the bottom of your belly, feel like all like these types of things. Then it helps me know that at least I have something to focus on, even if everything goes like into fear.
I love that. Thank you. It's like a flow that you process that's unique to you. And it's always fascinating to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to try to get two more in. Doug Skokie in Florida, you're up with Molly.
Super, super special. Keep it brief. Molly, it's amazing to hear the origin and the motivation for your website, because I was looking at it last night and reading your story, and I encourage any of my other brothers and sisters on this call to do the same. It was jaw-dropping. It was the best. Like, I was thinking to myself when I was reading it, and I'm not just saying this to say it, super genuine, the best narrative I've ever read of anybody on a website. And I was thinking to myself, like, where does this come from? This is the coolest website I've ever seen. Now I know. And you self-describe as a massive introvert. So I totally respect the energy that this is taking for you probably right now to also sit with us and field questions and so forth. And like the respect meter for you is off the charts, seriously. So I know I said I would be short, but I mean, Scott, we only get one chance like this. Sorry. The part of your story that I was most drawn to, getting back to that, was what you mentioned around your nonprofit. And I was viscerally moved by some of what you had described in ICU, going into prisons. And I was hoping you might be able to share a story, an anecdote, an anything on one of those experiences, perhaps the first time that you went into a prison and performed, and what the reaction was like.
Yeah. Well, I have like, how much time do you guys have? Because like,
I'm going nowhere, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, no one's going anywhere, Molly.
Nowhere.
We want to be cognizant of your time.
So yes, I am an introvert. Yes, this is, talking has always been a struggle for me. But when you asked me about talking about Project Music Heals Us, watch out, you'll be here for a while. So so for the prison side of the nonprofit, I actually, my best friend growing up ended up incarcerated in a maximum security institution in upstate New York for 9 years. And so I had, unfortunately, not as unique an opportunity as it should be, but I had a unique opportunity to go behind the bars and have compassion for the person on the inside. And the stories that I heard from him and the situation of our correctional facilities in the States is horrendous. And so when I started this nonprofit, it was right after playing for Ruth, my late stage Alzheimer's patient friend, in a nursing home in Hamden, Connecticut, was prisons. I had to figure out how to get into that system. And so I must have made like 50 phone calls to try and figure out how to do that. And it only took, it took 49 failed calls and one call that worked. And then it was like dominoes that this person knew that person knew that person that used to work here and sort of maybe could know this person. And so I followed this track and ended up with a concert in Redgowski Correctional Institution in Connecticut, in Uncasville, Connecticut. And I had a lot of, I was nervous to go in there, but it was like multiple layers of nerves for that concert, because any other time I'd been behind prison walls, it was just really a traumatic emotional experience that my best friend was there. And so going back in, I had no idea what to expect, but gosh darn it, I was going to play this concert and see what happened. So I brought my string quartet at the time in to play in a gymnasium in Redgowski. And it just so happened that the day of that concert, it was pouring rain. And so the rec time for 80 guys was like, their choice was, well, do you want to come to this classical music concert or go get soaked playing basketball outside? And so they're like, well, we'll just come and sit, enjoy this or sleep through this concert. And so we had 80 guys when we walked into the gymnasium. And in preparation for the concert, because I was like the MC basically for the whole thing, which is also that's a lot. So I went to the guards in the back of the room, the back of the gymnasium, and I asked them, is it okay if I ask questions? Is it okay if I'm talking all the way through this? Like, can we interact? Like, how much can I interact? And the guard's response was, oh my God, yeah, you need to talk as much as possible because these guys, they're going to be clueless. And I was like, wow, it was so condescending. It snapped me out of my introvert, whatever. And I was like, I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to like equal the playing field here. And I'm going to show these guys that like, I don't know anything about music either. I'm going to come in and like tell them that like, I have no freaking idea why Beethoven wrote what he did and why like hundreds of years later, we're still reacting the same way that we did, that we hear the crowds did hundreds of years ago. And so we shared everyone, the energy in the group. I like pushed it into the other players and we had, the reaction in that setting was unlike anything we'd felt before and any of the concerts we'd ever played. It was like you could cut the air with the level of attention and emotional attachment to everything that was happening. And so, as a performer, you feel that and you have to play in a different way. And so a couple of stories from that first interaction in a prison setting was we had one of the pieces that we put on the program was a solo violin piece. And because I don't play violin, it was one person, I went around to the back to just sort of check in and make sure that, like, see how things were going. And so as the before the violinist played, she said, guys, I'm terrified of this piece. I'm terrified of playing for you now. This is a scary situation for me. But I'm mostly nervous because I want to play my absolute best for you. And this is a piece that I have a lot of like weird psychological stuff because my teacher was like really tough on me for it and always told me I wasn't like ready to play it, but it's my favorite piece and I want to play the crap out of it for you right now. And so she started playing, and oh my God, before she even finished, the guys were like, they were on the edge of their seats, just like watching like every move. And before she could even finish playing, they were on their feet, like screaming and hooting and hollering and like, yeah, like you were awesome. That was so, and then like guys crying, like, you know, the tattoo marks here with like real tears coming to, it was like, what is happening? And also in that first interaction, when we were, after the concert, we were clearing up the chairs, and there was one guy who was assigned, one inmate who was assigned to help with that. And so he stuck around and was asking questions. And one of the things that we had said in that concert was classical music is kind of cool because there's no words. And that means that any words that you put to it, any picture that you put to it, any emotion you put to it is yours. That you can, and there's no right and wrong. And so we invite you, if you'd like to, in this movement, just close your eyes and see what you feel. And we didn't think about that. You don't close your eyes in prison, right? So at the end, when this guy was helping us pack the chairs up, he was like, yo, so I gotta tell you, that's a request to close your eyes. Like, yeah, that was the first time I've closed my eyes and felt safe behind these walls since I've been here. But I was a little worried about it, and I looked over at like my arch nemesis, and he was closing his eyes, and I looked over at my buddy here, and he was closing his eyes. So I closed my eyes, and we were like, whoa. So, and that was the first concert. And so to have like, that was 2016. So it's been almost 6 years now of that type of interaction. There hasn't been a single time that we played that we didn't get something like that in our performances. So yeah,
Incredible.
That's Project Music Heals Us. That's when you say what's next, that's what's next. That's the thing.
And the work you do, and we're so happy to help support what you're doing so that you can continue, because I know that it's the effort that you put into it, the time and the money and the travel and all of that is just, it's unbelievable that you're able to do that, especially with all your other obligations. I saw Molly's calendar for December and I went, oh my goodness, oh my God. She was just in Jerusalem, and then she's at Lincoln Center, and then she's at Carnegie Hall, and then, oh my goodness, I'm asking her to do something. We're gonna end, if we can sneak in one more. I think we've got a question from Jeff, your guest, Joel Keene. So Joel, if you'd like to ask the last question, you're up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks. What a great experience. So Molly, obviously my question is this, in the context that I have a son who's a freshman in college, a violin player studying music education. So this has been a great experience. My question is this: you obviously had some amazing accomplishments, right? Up until the top, right? The upper echelon. So I'm curious if you've had something professionally that was a setback to you, something that you wanted to achieve, that you didn't, and how are you able to sort of work through that? What advice might we be able to take to people that are in that scenario now?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for asking that question. Because I have failed so many times in my career. And it's great that what people are remembering now is like the good stuff, because it's been a heck of a lot of smacking my head against a brick wall and just like, and so, I mean, it's something I actually have said to my husband, like, maybe if you just like hit your head on the brick wall long enough, then like other people quit. And then if your last person's still doing it, then people start to like, oh, that's great, she's still there. So yeah, so I would say in my world, one of the top music festivals is called the Marlboro Music Festival. Tried out 4 times for it, failed 3 times, got in the 4th time. The Ravinia Music Festival, tried out 4 times, failed 3 times, got in the 4th time. And also, this instrument that I'm playing, like, it's not a violin, right? It's a viola. And a viola, the history of the viola is sort of like the Cinderella of the string orchestra family, that like people, it's meant to be the inner voice. It's meant to be like the supporting role. And so in my world, to be considered like in the spotlight with this instrument is a very new concept. And it's something that I actually have to fight against. And so when I decided what I wanted to do, which was like play recitals and play in the spotlight with this instrument and not just be like the oompas in a backup band, I had to fight like hell. And there were so many people that told me, just join an orchestra, just join this ensemble. I'm sure they would love to have the viola in the inner line, or why don't you break off and just like do your own thing instead of like trying to build a piano viola duo, like all of these things that like, well, why don't you try this, why don't you try that, because it just didn't fit like what I want to do and what I'm doing now. It just doesn't fit in our world. And so people couldn't like figure me out. They couldn't like put a pin on like, oh, well, she's this, well, yeah. And so it's really cool actually now, just like even within the past year, of having the stamp of like, oh, I've joined the Juilliard String Quartet, that now people look at like that accomplishment, that like, oh, wow, she can play, and oh, and she also, wow, she's really cool that she does this other thing. I'm like, yeah, I've been doing that other thing for so long, and like you ignored me, and you and I had to fight like hell for your attention. And so yeah, I would say like my whole life has been a series of failures with just like a few little successes that then somehow people remember those, are starting to remember those now. And so it's yeah.
Wow,
Now
thank you very much. That was great.
Unbelievable. Molly, we are gonna let you go. We are all gonna support the incredible work that you do. Happy holidays to you and Odette. It was great to catch up with him the other night. And you know that Meg and I love you to death. So she couldn't join us today. She had to work Christmas holiday party, and she was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be back in time. So she says hello. But we'll catch up soon. And thank you so much for carving out the time for us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for all the questions, and happy to be in touch if anyone wants to reach out. You have my email.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're the best, Molly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody who wants to stay on for a little overtime, feel free. Thanks, Molly.